At Christmas, my parents proudly handed my sister the keys to a vacation home. Moments later, they turned to me with a smug smile and shoved mortgage papers into my hands, saying, "This is the best present." Right. What else would you use your money for if not for your sister? When I refused, they escalated by bringing a lawyer to pressure me. What they never expected was that I'd show up with 5 police officers and 2 lawyers of my own, ready to turn their scheme upside down. My name is Kelly Morgan. Even now, at 25 years old, my place in the family hasn't changed. Ever since my younger sister, Nicole, was born, I've always heard you're the big sister. So you should set example. Nicole is 3 years younger than me and has always been a brilliant student. Even as a child, while I was struggling with middle school math, Nicole was already solving high school level problems. My parents would stick Nicole's report cards on the fridge and show them off proudly to the neighbors. I lost count of how many times I heard my mother say with delight, "Nicole is so talented. She has such a bright future ahead." Meanwhile, the only words I ever heard were, "You'll have to work harder if you don't want Nicole to leave you behind." One day during high school, my mother casually said, "Kelly, you'll start working right after graduation." Right. It was as if she didn't care about my future at all. My father added, "You'll probably get a part-time job, a local cafe, and eventually get married and settle down." They had no idea I was saving up money from working at a restaurant, after school and on weekends, or that I was secretly studying business on my own. Nicole just smiled gracefully and said, "Kelly's always been practical like that." She didn't mean in a bad way, but those words still stung like a needle. That night I cried alone in my room, glancing at the brand new MacBook Pro my parents had given Nicole for her birthday. While I studied online marketing on my old second-hand laptop, I swore to myself, one day, I'll prove them wrong. I promised myself I'd achieve success that could rival Nicole, the golden child, as my parents called her. But back then, I didn't yet realize something important. No matter how successful I became, my parents would always see me as their lesser daughter. The following year, I graduated high school and started working at a small local marketing firm. The pay was low, but I was able to gain real digital marketing experience. I studied at community college at night and worked as a freelance writer on weekends. My parents dismissed all my hard work as small-time jobs and at every family gathering. Nicole's achievements were always the center of attention. Nicole, meanwhile, was living the dream at Harvard. The year Nicole graduated from college, Christmas became an unforgettable nightmare for me. On December 23rd, our whole family gathered at our house in the snowy Chicago suburbs. Nicole had just graduated with honors from Harvard, earning a degree in art history. A new graduation photo of hers was displayed in the living room, and my mother proudly showed off to every guest. "This year we have a very special Christmas present," my mother announced, unable to hide her excitement. My father took out a thick envelope and handed it to Nicole. "Well done, Nicole. You're the pride of our family. This will help you start your new life." Inside was the deed to a vacation house in Aspen, Colorado. A beautiful home with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a breathtaking mountain view. Price tag $450. Ling ling ling. Nicole burst into tears. Thanking our parents, and everyone hugged each other except me. I just sat at the edge of the sofa, staring at the scene in disbelief. "That's wonderful," I said with a forced smile, silently calculating that the savings I'd built up over 5 years didn't even amount to a fifth of the value of Nicole's new vacation home. After Christmas dinner, my father called me into his study. "Kelly, I need to talk to you," he said. Suddenly, serious spread out on the desk were mortgage documents about Nicole's vacation house. We couldn't pay for it all at once, so we'll be making payments for 30 years. About $2,000 a month, including interest. I stared at him, confused. "So I want you to cover half, just $1,000 a month." He said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Nicole just graduated and doesn't have a stable income yet. You've been working since high school, and you're single, so you can afford it, right?" I felt the blood draining from my face. "Dad, you bought a $450 vacation house for Nicole without ever discussing it with me. And now you expect me to pay for it." My mother walked into the study. "Kelly, It's only natural to help your family. Nicole worked so hard in college. This is the least we can do for her. Why should I have to pay for Nicole's vacation house? My father's face turned red. Have you forgotten all we did for you for 18 years? The food. The house. The education. Now it's your turn to get back to the family. But you never even asked me. You asked. My mother snorted. What right do you have to decide anything? Nicole is a well-educated as a coal. Respectable woman. You just work at a cafe with a high school diploma. In reality, I wasn't even working at a cafe. But my parents didn't care about my career at all. To them, my work was insignificant. You've been working for 7 years. Since high school. With all your savings. Can't you manage on dollars? $750 a month. My father insisted we expect you to start payments next month. Sign the paperwork. I stood up. Mom. Dad. This is insane. I have my own plans for my life. I'm thinking about buying a condo for myself. A condo? My mother scoffed. What makes you think a high school graduate like you deserves that Nicole's future matters so much more? She'll have a real career. Marry a wonderful man, and build a beautiful family. I stood up and grabbed my coat. Mom. Dad. I absolutely refuse. I want to make it perfectly clear right now that I will not pay. My father's face turned bright red. Kelly. Sit down. This conversation isn't over. It is for me. I headed toward the study door. Demanding $1,000 a month without even discussing it with me. Are you out of your mind? Wait. My mother shouted. You don't have a choice. This is your duty as a family. Goodbye. I closed the door behind me and left the house without looking back. I cried in my car. Thinking about what family really meant. It wasn't about love. It was all about hierarchy and usefulness. I was always at the bottom. Always the one expected to make sacrifices. For a week after, I refused to pay for Nicole's vacation home. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. The first call was from my Aunt Hillary Kelly. Your parents told me everything. I can't believe you won't help Nicole financially. That's not what a big sister does. Her voice was full of condemnation. She graduated college with honors. She has a bright future. You're single. You've just been working since high school. You should have some money to spare. Nicole is a college-educated, respectable woman. There's a difference in class. Next was my Uncle Dan Kelly. Do you want to disgrace the family? Your parents are worried sick. Nicole is the pride of this family. You should be supporting her. Uncle Dan. I'm family too. Why am I always the one who has to sacrifice? Sacrifice. He snapped. You only graduated high school. Nicole went to Harvard. She has real status. Can't you at least help her sister? The barrage of calls from relatives continued. My cousin Wendy. My great-uncle Frank and my Aunt Hillary. Every single one of them said the same thing since I was single. Only had a high school diploma. And was just working a regular job. It was only natural for me to support Nicole. The promising university-educated one. But the call that hurt me most was from my grandmother. Dorothy Kelly. I'm so disappointed in you. In my day, women always put family first and made sacrifices. That's how it's supposed to be. I didn't raise a selfish woman like you. Grandma. I love my family too. But being forced to pay such a huge sum without even being asked. You have no right to decide. You only graduated high school. Nicole is an educated one. Respectable woman. It's your job to support her. Know your place. Even my job started to feel the impact. My mother called my company, sobbing to my co-workers that her daughter had abandoned the family. That afternoon, my business partner, Sean, called me into his office. Kelly, it seems like your personal problems are starting to affect our business. I'm sorry. I never imagined my family would actually call the office. It wasn't just your mother. 3 relatives called this afternoon, saying you abandoned your sister and left your family in trouble. My face burned with shame. Sean. This is completely private. It has nothing to do with work. I understand that. I know you haven't spoken to your parents for a long time. But maybe you should do something about this. It might be best for your own reputation. The truth was, I was hiding a major secret for the last 3 years. I've been running my own blog, consulting business. Making a steady $4,000 a month. From small businesses to major clients. But I never told my family. Because if they found out, their financial demands would only get worse. That night, when I got home, my neighbor, Mrs. Gale, was waiting for me in the hallway. "Kelly, your mother called me today. She's worried about your sister. You know, it's become quite the talk around the neighborhood that you won't support your brilliant little sister." I was speechless. My mother had even exposed my status to the neighbors, judging my worth based on my education. Like we were living in the Middle Ages. 2 weeks after the new year, I received a registered letter. When I saw the law firm's letterhead on the thick envelope, I got a terrible feeling. My blood ran cold as I opened it. "We are filing a civil lawsuit against Kelly Morgan, demanding repayment of $350. 0 inches child rearing expenses." Attached was a detailed breakdown of every child rearing cost: food, housing, medical bills, education, even clothing. It was like they turned 18 years of parenting into an itemized service invoice. But the most insulting part was the line at the end. "The defendant, despite only holding a high school diploma, has a stable income and therefore has a social and moral obligation to support the family member with a college education." That night, my mother called Kelly. "I hired a lawyer. Playtime is over. Pay the $350. 0 inches full right now. Or else what, I'll ruin your social standing. I'll make sure everyone at work and in the neighborhood knows what a heartless, cold person you are. You're a disgrace. Just a high school grad who abandoned her family." The next day, my mother showed up at my workplace, shouting at the front desk, "Bringing me my daughter. I want to see the heartless, ungrateful high school graduate who abandoned her family." Security rushed over. But my mother refused to back down. "Everyone listen to me. Kelly Morgan is a heartless woman who abandoned her family. She refuses to support her college graduate's sister and is making her parents suffer. She's been working since she graduated high school. If she won't help her struggling little sister." My coworkers stared out the windows, pointing at me. The humiliation was unbearable. Soon after, the online attacks began. My mother posted my photo on social media with the caption, "My shameless daughter who abandoned her family." Relatives shared the post in the comments section, filled up with criticism. "Who does she think she is with only a high school diploma? Of course she should help her sister. She's single with no kids. She has plenty to spare." That's why I made up my mind. I couldn't take any more of my family's emotional and financial manipulation. It was time to fight back. It was time to reveal the truth. I'd been hiding. I hired the best attorney I could find, Mary Ford. She specialized in family law, particularly cases of financial abuse. At our first meeting, I laid everything out. The truth is, I run my own consulting firm. I make over $150. 000 a year. I confessed. Mary's eyes widened. "That's a significant difference." Detail. "Why didn't you tell your family?" "Because I knew if they found out, their demands would only get bigger. They judge people by their education. But when it comes to money, that doesn't matter." "I see. Then let's go on the offensive." The next week, we reported everything to the police. My mother's workplace intrusion, the defamation on social media, the harassing phone calls. All potentially criminal offenses. On top of that, I went public with my business success. I finally agreed to an interview with a local business magazine that I've been declining for years. Within days, an article ran, "Female entrepreneur achieve $150. 000 annual income by age 25. The article covered my company, my client list, and my vision for the future. The day the article was published, my father called in a rage. "What is this? If you're making that kind of money, why won't you help Nicole, Dad? My success is the result of my own efforts. It has nothing to do with supporting the family. Nothing to do with it. We raised you. Have you forgotten everything we did for you? Are you saying that raising me for 18 years means I owe you financial obedience for life?" After that, my parents took things even further. They started camping out in front of my apartment, holding up signs. "Pay back your education costs. Shameless daughter who abandoned her family." But I wasn't afraid anymore. I called the police, gathered evidence and pressed forward with legal action alongside my lawyer. My parents couldn't accept that their high school graduate daughter was actually a far more successful entrepreneur than either of them. The battle had only just begun. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. I wore a navy business suit and sat at the defendant's table beside Mary Ford. Across from us in the plaintiff's seats, Sammy parents, Linda and Peter, along with their attorney. Let's begin with the plaintiff's statement, announced Judge Thomas Green. My parents, attorney, Wesley Clark, stood up. Your Honor, this case is simple. The plaintiffs, Linda and Peter Morgan, invested $350. 0 inches raising the defendant over 18 years. The defendant now has a stable income, but refuses to repay her debt to the family by supporting her sister's education loan. I almost laughed to myself. Education loan. A $450. 000 vacation home was now being called an education loan. Next, my father took the stand. Your Honor, we love our daughter, but Kelly doesn't understand her duty to the family. Reclaiming the $350. 000 we invested in her upbringing is a reasonable request. Then it was Mary's turn for cross-examination. Mr. Morgan, after your daughter turned 18, did you pay a single dollar for her education or living expenses? My father stumbled. No. But next I was called to the stand. Mary asked Kelly, what is your current profession? An annual income. I run a digital marketing consulting firm. I make about $150. 000 a year. A stir went through the courtroom. My parents' faces turned white. When did you start this company? 3 years ago. After high school. I gained experience at a local company while taking night business courses and gradually build up my own client base. Did your parents know about your success? No. They always referred to me as just a high school graduate and didn't refer to me as my sister, who was a promising college graduate. I knew if they found out about my success, they demand money. During cross-examination, the plaintiff's attorney questioned my loyalty to the family. But I answered calmly. I love my family. But love and financial exploitation are not the same. Demanding that I pay for an expensive vacation home, I never agreed to isn't love. That afternoon, evidence was presented about my parents' workplace harassment, social media defamation, and threatening phone calls. According to police testimony, my parents' actions clearly constituted stalking and defamation. Judge Thomas Green delivered his verdict after reviewing this case. I am dismissing all claims made by the plaintiffs. There is no legal obligation for an adult child to repay parents for the cost of their upbringing. This is a well-established principle of family law. Furthermore, the harassment against the defendant cannot be overlooked. I am issuing a restraining order against the plaintiffs. They are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of the defendant, visiting her home or workplace, or contacting her by phone, email or social media. After leaving the courtroom, Mary Ford turned to me. This is a total victory. With this restraining order, they won't be able to harass you anymore. The next morning, my Aunt Hillary showed up at my office. She had been at the trial the day before, but left without saying a word. Kelly, I couldn't sleep last night. She looked exhausted as she took a seat. We were completely fooled. Your parents told us you refused to pay for Nicole's grad school loan. I had no idea it was actually a $450. 000 vacation home. And Hillary, I was shocked, too. I can't believe they lied to everyone. That's not all. She shook her head. They told us you were just a high school grad working at a cafe. So we looked down on you. But in reality, you're a successful entrepreneur making $150. 000 a year. I'm so ashamed. I don't know how I'll ever face you again. Tears welled up in her eyes. Uncle Dan. Wendy. Everyone's been calling me since last night, feeling terrible about what we said to you. Telling you to know your place. I'm so sorry. And Hillary, I'm really not upset. You were victims too. No. It's not okay. Her voice broke with tears. We judged you by your education. We were wrong to look down on you just because you only finished high school. But you're more successful than any of us. And now she has grown serious. The power dynamic in this family has completely shifted. Your parents are totally ostracized now. Everyone's calling them liars. And they have no one left on their side. When I arrived at work, my business partner, Sean, rushed over. Excited. Kelly. Yesterday's trial. What your parents told us was nothing like what really happened. I mean, I never believed them. But they came begging. Saying their daughter refused to pay her sister's tuition. In reality, it was all about a $450,000 vacation house. Unbelievable. Sean. I'm really sorry you had to deal with all this. I'm just glad it's finally clear. Your parents are exactly who you said they were. I'm proud of you for standing up to them. He turned serious. We fully support you as a company. And honestly, this is only going to boost your personal brand. People are starting to see you as a leader symbol. The entrepreneur who stood up to family financial exploitation as a symbol. It's not just local papers. Now you might be on national news. This is a real issue. Academic elitism and financial abuse. You become an icon that evening. My phone was ringing nonstop with calls from relatives and acquaintances apologizing. I'm so sorry. Kelly. We believed their lies. I thought it was about a student loan. I had no idea it was for a vacation house. You were right. I'm truly sorry. That night, as I quietly ate dinner in my apartment, I thought to myself, now that the truth was out, my relationships would be fundamentally different. But that wasn't a bad thing. Only the people who truly understood and supported me would remain. A few days later, the police called Miss Morgan. We've explained the restraining order to your parents. We've warned them that if they violate it, they may be arrested. Please contact us if you need anything. For the first time, I felt truly free. Legally and socially. I was finally released from my family's exploitation. 6 months have passed since the restraining order. I purchased a beautiful house in the suburbs paying cash. 3 bedrooms. 2 bathrooms. A spacious backyard. It cost $250. Ling ling ling. Half the price of Nicole's vacation home. But it was perfect for me because it was mine. Earned through my own hard work. A symbol of true freedom. One afternoon in October, the doorbell rang. I checked the intercom monitor and saw Nicole standing there. She was thin and haggard, with none of her old sparkle left. I hesitated for a moment, but opened the door. Kelly. Can we talk? Her voice was trembling. We sat in the living room. Nicole's eyes filled with tears as she began to speak. Kelly. I'm really sorry. I was wrong about everything. About what? About Mom and Dad. About you. About myself, all of it. Nicole covered her face with her hands. I never wanted that house. But Mom and Dad kept telling me. It's what you deserve. Of course. A Harvard grad should have something like this. Even though I knew I couldn't make the payments. I listened quietly. It wasn't until the trial that I saw things clearly. How successful you were. How much you supported the family and how spoiled I'd been. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Mom and Dad always call me the golden child. But I see now they were just using me to maintain their own image and to satisfy their own need for validation. Nicole. No. Let me finish. She raised her hand. I couldn't keep up with the house payments and the bank ended up foreclosing on it. Mom and Dad were furious. Now they're telling me to apologize to Kelly and ask for her forgiveness. But I finally realized they never really loved me either. They were just using me. Nicole stood and walked to the window. Kelly. After high school, you built your life entirely on your own. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad paid for everything for me. My tuition. My living expenses. Even after graduation. I just stayed at home saying I was looking for something artistic instead of actually working. So what about now? I finally got a job. I'm working as a graphic designer. A local ad agency. The pay isn't great. But it's the first money I've ever earned for myself. Nicole turned back to face me. Kelly. I'm really sorry I almost ruined your life. I took a deep breath. Nicole. I don't blame you. We were both victims of Mom and Dad's manipulation. You were used as the golden child and I was used as the ATM. Do you forgive me, of course? But I have one condition. I said seriously. Don't let Mom and Dad control you anymore. Live your life for yourself. And don't ask me for financial help. I promise. She said. Her voice trembling with tears. We ended up talking for 2 more hours about childhood memories. Our parents' controlling behavior and hopes for the future. For the first time, we were able to speak as equals. As real sisters. After Nicole left, I went out to the garden to tend to my roses. The seedlings I had planted in spring had bloomed beautifully. The roses I grew myself seemed especially lovely in November. Just as I expected. It happened. A letter from my mother arrived because of the restraining order. She couldn't contact me directly. But Mel could still reach me. Dear Kelly. We're getting older and are worried about our future. We heard you bought a house and it sounds big. Would you let us live with you? We're family. After all. And families are supposed to help each other. Let's put the past behind us and start fresh with Nicole. I couldn't help but laugh as I read the letter. Nothing had changed this time. They were trying to use their retirement anxiety as leverage to move into my house. I consulted Mary Ford about it. As expected. She said. But with a restraining order in place, they can't put any direct pressure on you. You're safe. I wrote a reply to my mother. Ma'am. Your plans for your retirement are your own responsibility. I'm an independent adult living my own life. There's no place for you in my home. I will not accept any such request from now on. Kelly. After sending a letter, I call my real estate agent. I'd like to upgrade my security system. That night, I went out into the backyard and looked up at the stars. At 25, I had finally found true freedom. Freedom to live by my own values. Not bound by my family's expectations or demands. Next year, I plan to expand my company and take on new business ventures. And the more I succeed, the more it will prove that the path I chose for myself was the right one. Maybe my parents are still plotting to move into my house. But I'm not afraid anymore. As I walked back inside, I smiled. This isn't an ending. It's the beginning of a new life. A life where I make my own choices, take responsibility for them, and build my own happiness. I have finally, truly grown up. And tomorrow, and every day after, I'll keep living as my true self. Story 2. When I finally returned home after months of exhausting volunteer work overseas, I expected a warm welcome. Instead, I walked into my own house and froze. My parents had completely remodeled it for my sister's kids without ever asking me. With smug smiles, they told me it was all preparation for when I'd become her full-time nanny. As if my dreams, sacrifices, and choices meant nothing. That was the moment I decided to remind them whose house it really was. This is preparation for you to take care of your sister's unborn child. My mother said unapologetically. As if it were her rightful claim. In front of me was the living room, which should have been my castle, transformed into a pitiful child's room. The wallpaper had been stripped away and replaced with a jarring animal pattern in bright, painful colors, instead of the soft cream it used to be. The floor was covered with thick mats to prevent injuries. And in one corner sat a baby crib that still hadn't been unpacked. My father, who seemed pleased with himself, crossed his arms and said, "Well, surprised. We managed to get this ready before you came home." Surprised? That was far too mild a word to describe my feelings. A boiling mix of anger and despair, of being betrayed, churned in my stomach. My name is Sarah. I had just returned to my home country, a few hours ago. After a year of volunteer work abroad, I purchased this little house with funds I had saved up during my student days. It was my first and biggest purchase in life and a symbol of my independence. I was excited for the new life that was about to begin. I would use the experiences I gained over the years to build a new career. This house was supposed to be the foundation for it. But my real parents and sister had trampled on my castle, painting it without my permission. My sister Kelly had always been that way. She couldn't be satisfied unless she got everything she wanted without caring about how it affected others. And my parents had always pampered and condoned Kelly's behavior. If she went off track, it was never her fault. They always blamed it on someone else or circumstances cleaning up after her while I was abroad. I had heard that Kelly was pregnant. The men had disappeared early on, and in the end, my parents were taking care of everything. However, I never imagined that the consequences would reach me so far across the ocean. While returned to my house after a year, I was welcomed by my parents, who looked proud, and my sister Kelly lounging on the sofa, rubbing her swollen belly. Then I was hit with the words I shared earlier. "Can you explain what this is all about?" The voice I squeezed out from my throat sounded surprisingly cold. Even to myself. My mother frowned, as if she was displeased with my attitude. "It means exactly what it says. Ellie is going to be a mother soon. You're single and looking for a job. Right. You should have plenty of time. Since we're family, It's only natural to help each other out. Helping each other and illegally renovating my house are two different things. Try to take over. My life is completely different. My mother's face showed sheer exasperation in my rebuttal and she let out a sigh. You really lack charm. Don't you? Especially when Kelly is going through such a tough time. Can't you at least make some effort for your family? I'm about to start a job utilizing my overseas experience. I've been steadily preparing for this locally. My plan. My life. My future. All of these have been dismissed as worthless by these people with just a phrase. You're single. And have time. This house is mine. It disregard my ownership. Illegally enter using a spare key, and renovate the house without my permission. I don't understand how abnormal that is. No. They don't even try to understand. Kelly then laughed and cheerfully said. When I heard that you were coming back, I thought it was perfect. I can save money by not hiring a babysitter. So it's killing two birds with one stone. Right, those words, spoken by a seemingly innocent and pure exploiter, snapped something inside me. I turned on my heel and headed toward the entrance. Where are you going? My mother's hysterical voice pierced my back. But I ignored it. I opened the door and glanced back. Just once I saw Kelly looking dim. Found it on the couch and my parents glaring at me, with their brows furrowed. What you were doing is a crime. Having said just that, I closed the door. Fortunately, my suitcase was still at the entrance. I dragged it out and dashed into the night street. The cold air slightly cooled the raging anger inside me. I immediately hailed a taxi and headed over to the house of my partner, Ben, who had been my emotional support over the past year. As soon as I opened his door, I collapsed in tears. Right there. He said nothing, simply rubbing my back in silence. I wonder if he did that for over an hour, until my tears dried up. Finally, having regained a little composure, I told him everything that had happened. Ben works at a law firm. He is an intelligent person who always makes calm judgments. After quietly listening to my story, he held my hand and said in a clear tone, Sarah, you haven't done anything wrong. What they're doing is an unforgivable invasion of rights under the pretext of family. I fully support your decision to take legal action. That night, Ben arranged for me to stay in the guest room. But I couldn't sleep at all. Staring at the darkness of the ceiling, various memories flooded over me. Why did I make the big decision to buy a house at such a young age? It was because I needed to distance myself physically from my family home. Kelly had always wanted everything that was mine. As a child, it was toys and clothes. During my school days, she even tried to get her hands on my friends. Each time, my parents would invariably lecture me. You're the older sister, so you should be patient. Kelly. Still, child Kelly. Selfishness was a monster, nurtured by my parents' overprotectiveness. Even when I said I was going to do overseas volunteer work, my parents vehemently opposed it. It's dangerous for a girl to go overseas alone while they pretended to care about my well-being with their words. Their true feelings oozed out from every corner of their speech. And what will happen to Kelly if you're gone? If something happens, you won't be able to be there for her. Looking back, it was clear that it wasn't a concern at all. The real worry was simply that I would go somewhere beyond my comfort zone control, and no longer be available as a convenient tool for Kelly. For them, I was always meant to be a supporting character for Kelly and a safety net for when things went wrong. My life, my dreams were always secondary. This is why I needed to build my own castle to escape from their grip. Then, a week before my departure, that dreadful battle over the spare key unfolded. My parents arrived unannounced while I was unpacking at my new home. What's going to happen to the house while you're away? My mother said that as she surveyed the room, as if it were her own home. The house deteriorates quickly if no one lives in it and the air isn't changed. Mold can grow in the walls from humidity, and the pipes can rust. My father chimed in. And it's for emergencies with mail piles up. What if something happens? We'll check in on it from time to time. So just give us one key. I felt a strong sense of caution inside in case something happens. Was a magic phrase that had always been used to suit my sister's convenience. If I handed them the key, my privacy would be violated for sure. They might rummage through my room while I was away, or in the worst-case scenario, even bringing my sister's belongings. That's not a concern. I firmly declined. I'll set up mail forwarding and have my friend Patty and a professional management company take care of the house. So it's all fine. That answer seemed to touch a nerve with them. Well, It seems we aren't that trustworthy. My mother sighed, dramatically pressing a handkerchief to her eyes as if she were a tragic heroine. Although we're your real parents, friends, and others are more important to you. Even though we're worrying so much about you. My father, hardly hiding his irritation, said, "Why can't you accept your parents' goodwill openly?" It was a usual pattern when I responded with reason. They twisted it into an emotional argument, trying to instill doubt in me. Me during the busy time before my departure. I didn't want to continue pointless arguments with them, which would wear down my mind any further. I took a deep breath and pulled the spare key from the drawer. Fine. I'll leave this with you. But promise me only in truly emergency situations, and absolutely do not enter the house without my permission. I now know that this insistence was completely meaningless at that time. In my desperate desire to escape their control, I traded a momentary peace for a single key. That moment of compromise led to this worst-case scenario. A year of volunteer work changed me. Even in poor conditions, people respected and supported each other. And above all, they lived standing on their own feet. There I learned the true meanings of independence and dignity. The right to live as a human being, not as someone's possession. I felt the importance of that in my bones. That's why I couldn't forgive them. They trampled over my home, the symbol of my dignity, with their shoes. They tried to lock me back in a cage. Or for Kelly. As dawn broke, my heart was set. The phrase "because we're family" was not a license to act without consequence. Rather, because we are family, there's a line that must not be crossed. I must fight to protect my life. Dawn came, even though I shouldn't have been able to sleep. My mind was surprisingly clear when I went to the living room. Ben was already brewing coffee and waiting for me. "You probably didn't sleep well. It's understandable," he said while placing a note on the table. It simply outlined the actions I needed to take. First, prepare your home's registration documents, and if possible, photos of the room before any renovations. Then report it to the police, informing them that someone has entered your home and made changes, without your permission as the owner. When the police arrived, reported your ownership, and request a site inspection. There's no need to get emotional. Just convey the facts calmly. The note also listed legal keywords like trespassing and property damage. They would use the word family as a shield. However, under the law, everyone is equal. The fact that you are the owner will be your strongest weapon. Don't forget that. Ben's calm words invigorated my heart. I was not alone. Just thinking that made me feel empowered. I prepare myself and press the call button on my smartphone. The electronic sound coming from the speaker resonated in my ears like a gong announcing the start of battle. 911. What is your emergency? For a moment, I was at a loss for words at the calm voice of the operator. I was about to confront my family, and I could not falter. Then I took a deep breath and spoke clearly. There has been an incident. My house has been illegally trespassed, and my belongings have been damaged. The culprits are my parents and my younger sister. When asked if my life was in danger, I informed them that I was not, and I was then directed to redial a non-emergency number. After explaining the situation again, the police agreed to come a few hours after the report. The intercom at Ben's house rang when I opened the door. 2 police officers in uniform were standing there. One was an older, calm-looking officer, and the other was a younger, earnest-looking officer. We sat facing each other at the living room table with Ben's support. I explained everything that had happened so far. I presented the property registration certificate and photos of the room saved on my smartphone before the renovations as evidence. The photos were casually taken right before my departure for volunteering to record the arrangement of the furniture. But now they were about to become decisive evidence. The older police officer listened to my story in silence, glanced over the evidence, documents, and nodded quietly. I see. I understand the situation. This may indeed be not something that can be handled simply as a family dispute. Since the current state of the house has been changed against your clear will as the owner, we need to conduct an investigation. Could you guide us to your residence? Upon hearing those words, I recognized the seriousness of the matter. Once again, there was no turning back. A police car followed behind the car that Ben was driving. The familiar way home felt heavy, as if it were a path leading to the execution site. Is this really the right thing to do? For a moment, my heart wavered. However, the face reflected in the rearview mirror was strangely resolute. I stood in front of my house entrance once again alongside the police officer. It was the place I had dashed out from in despair the previous day. But now I was not alone. There was a powerful ally beside me. An enforcer of the law. When I rang the doorbell, my father opened the door with an irritated expression. Upon noticing the police officer standing behind me, his face changed to one of surprise and confusion. What is this? What's going on? I have come to file a police report regarding an illegal entry and property damage. And my calm words. My mother would come out from the living room, raised her voice in a high pitch. A police report. What are you talking about? Why are you bringing the police right after yesterday? The older police officer began explaining to my parents in a calm voice. This is indeed the property owned by Sarah. Correct. I have been informed that you entered without permission, using a spare key, and made alterations to the interior without consent. My father, despite being flustered, raised his voice. We are family. What kind of permission is needed to enter my daughter's house? Besides, that spare key was handed over by her voluntarily. My father completely disregarded the circumstances under which he persuaded me to get in the key, almost as if I had willingly offered it out of pure goodwill. How much I resisted back then. How firmly I had insisted it was a memory that had conveniently been erased from his mind. Glaring at that distorted truth, I felt my anger evolving into pity. My mother continued in a tone reminiscent of a police officer. She's just a little tired. She's been overseas for a year and is a bit on edge. We as her parents simply wanted to help. Why does it have to involve the police, Kelly? As if waiting for the right moment, appeared at the entrance of the living room, rubbing her belly, looking like a tragic heroine. Sarah, what's going on? If you do something like this, it will affect the baby. I can't believe you're selling the family to the police. Their arguments were all based on emotion, constantly revolving around because we're family, because it's parental love and because we care about you. They believed without a doubt that before those universal words, the law and individual rights became powerless. However, that illusion was ruthlessly shattered by the next words of the older police officer. I understand your feelings, but the law is a different matter. Even if you had a spare key, it doesn't mean that you were given free access to the house. If you entered the property without the clear permission of the owner, Sarah, and caused damage to the property, you could be violating the law. This is before being a family issue, a legal issue. I could see my father's face turning red with anger. You probably could not accept that their justice had been denied by societal rules. Don't mess with us. Are you trying to treat us like criminals? What's so terrible about changing the wallpaper a little? It's your fault, Sarah, for saying unnecessary things. My enraged father tried to grab at me. At that moment, the young police officer quickly stepped in and held my father's arm. Sir, please calm down. Any further action may be considered abuse of justice. Seeing my father being restrained, my mother seemed to change her strategy. She collapsed in tears, saying no. Don't do this. And began to loudly lament how she couldn't face the neighbors. It was an obvious act to draw sympathy from those around her. Kelly spat out, I don't care anymore, and disappeared deeper into the living room. It was a hellish scene, but my heart was oddly calm. This was the reality they had chosen. The sight of my family exposing their disgrace and screaming in anger erased even the last remnants of emotion I had left. I turned to the older police officer and clearly stated my intent as the owner. I officially report the damage. I demand that this house be restored to its original state. If that is not possible, I will seek proper compensation for the damages. That moment was when I was completely liberated from the curse known as family. In front of my resolute attitude, the police mechanically proceeded with their procedures. On-site investigations were conducted and numerous photos of a transformed living room were taken. My parents were to be voluntarily questioned. In the meantime, I contacted Ben to report the situation. Well done, Sarah. You've overcome the toughest hurdle. But the real battle is just beginning. Ben was right with the police's involvement. They were forced to understand whether they liked it or not, that their actions were legally impermissible. However, that did not mean they genuinely felt remorse. Rather, their struggle was morphing into something even more insidious from this point onward. That night, my smartphone began to ring incessantly. The callers were my aunts, uncles and cousins. Relatives who typically only contacted each other during weddings and funerals began to reach out. The call from Aunt Doris set it all off. Sarah, I've heard your mother's crying. You've changed since you went overseas. People who don't value family can't find happiness anywhere. It was a one-sided imposition of outdated values. I said nothing, and simply hung up the call quietly. But the attacks didn't end there. The next call came from my maternal grandmother, who had doted on me so much when I was a child. Sarah. Her voice was hoarse and frail. I heard from your mother, there was no need to call the police. Your parents were just worried about your sister. Please don't make this a bigger issue than it needs to be. I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart. It was the worst kind of peer pressure disguised as goodwill. Guilt was being drilled into me, playing on my conscience about not wanting to upset my grandmother. I bit my lip. Grandma. I'm sorry. But this is something I have to decide for myself. I had no choice but to hang up. After saying that, I felt as if a cold droplet was falling in my heart. It was evident that my mother was making calls to all our relatives, spinning a web of lies as if they were the victims. She claimed that I had returned from overseas, infected with strange ideas, bullied poor Kelly, and ultimately turned my benevolent parents into the police. That was probably the storyline. They aimed to isolate me by portraying me as an ungrateful madwoman and surrounding me with pressure from all sides to force me to withdraw my demands. The next call was from my father. However, his tone was eerily calm, unlike the angry shouts from yesterday. Sarah. I understand your feelings. We may have gone a bit too far. I apologize. I was momentarily taken aback by the sudden apology. But upon hearing his next words, I realized it was merely his new negotiation tactic. But you need to face reality a little. How much do you think it costs to restore the wallpaper? We can't just procure that kind of money immediately. Instead, why don't we talk about something more constructive? For example, we could let Kelly and the others use the room as it is. In return, we would pay you a certain amount each month as rent. How about that? It's not a bad deal. Right. I was genuinely astounded. Rent. What meaning is there in a promise made merely with words? Until now, though they often beg for money, I had never been repaid. As promised, they would find some excuse to delay the payments. And in a few months, it was obvious they would angrily retort. We're family, so don't complain about the rent. Yet even if they did pay the rent as promised, the essence of the issue was not there. He still did not understand that their actions constitute a crime. This was not just about rent or contracts. It was a matter of the soul, of having trust and dignity trampled upon. Rent. Are you kidding me? I said coldly. This isn't even the kind of issue we're discussing. Besides, I can hardly believe that you would pay as promised. But that doesn't matter anymore. You committed a crime. As long as you lack that awareness, you can't even come to the negotiation table. Restoring the house to its original state is the minimum responsibility you must fulfill. My father's tone of voice was gradually tinged with irritation. Why are you repaying our kindness with this kind of betrayal? It's too much. Isn't it? Who do you think put you through university? Who took care of this house while you were off volunteering? You should be grateful instead of calling the police. Gratitude. Don't confuse control with management. This is the house I bought with my own money. It doesn't belong to you. It's a parent's duty to raise their children. And if you boast about that as a favor, you are unfit as parents. I have nothing more to say. From now on, please communicate through my lawyer. Alavier. Are you really going that far against your family? Yes, I will. I realize that you see me not as family, but merely as a tool for your own convenience. I ended the call before my father got home. Anything back? My hand was sweating as I gripped the smartphone. My heart was beating fiercely. Strangely, I did not feel fear. Instead, I sensed a quiet determination rising from the depths of my abdomen. I couldn't back down there. It was a battle for me to reclaim control over my own life. Negotiations continued for several days. My parents tried various tactics to persuade me. They demanded a reduction, proposed installment payments, or even spread lies about Kelly, supposedly collapsing from emotional shock. Tried to instill guilt in me. I followed Ben's advice and refused any direct communication. I notified them that all demand should go through the lawyer I had engaged. This became the decisive blow with the arrival of an agent called the law, which rendered their emotional arguments useless. My parents finally seemed to give in. A few days later, I received word from my lawyer. Your parents have agreed to pay the restoration costs in full. Ironically, most of that amount had originally been their savings for retirement, which was supposed to fund Kelly's childbirth expenses and subsequent living support. Because of their foolish actions, they ended up carving away at the future of their most beloved daughter with their own hands. After the payment of expenses was confirmed, I arranged for the contractor and began the renovation of the house. The wallpaper returned to the calm cream color that I had chosen. The floor mat was peeled up and the brand new crib was taken away by the contractor without ever being used. As I smelled the paint lingering in the living room, I realized that the long battle I had fought was finally over. My castle had finally regained its original rightful form. On the day the house was completely cleaned up, I stood alone in the middle of the empty living room. The setting sun streamed through the window, warm, illuminating the room. Here I would begin my new life. A life that would not be disturbed by anyone. No matter what. By anyone. Just my own. I took out my smartphone and deleted all the contacts of my parents, Kelly, and the relatives who had accused me. There was no longer any need for my heart to be disturbed by their voices. I cut ties with my past. Just then, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood Ben with a bouquet in his arms. Congratulations, Sarah. I came to celebrate your new beginning. Seeing his gentle smile, a tear fell from my eye. It was not a terror of sadness or anger. It was a terror of hope. A terror that came after overcoming everything and taking a new step forward. A year has passed since then. The house that was once my castle has now become a true home, filled with warm light and a gentle atmosphere. The traces of that dreaded animal-patterned wallpaper are nowhere to be found. And on the cream-colored walls, there are photos of smiling children I took while volunteering. Ben visits on weekends, and we enjoy a modest dinner together. I never imagined that such mundane daily life could be so precious. I am now starting a new career in an international NPO. It is a fulfilling job where I can make the most of my experience abroad. I am planning educational support programs for children in refugee camps flying around the world every day. Recently, I received a video letter from the children in the areas we support. Watching their faces, smile, and say thank you, Sarah, in halting words, I truly felt glad I chose this job not to be someone's sacrifice, but to build a future hand in hand with someone else. That is what I really wanted to do. On the other hand, my family, who never tried to understand my choices until the end, seemed to be reaping what they had sowed. It seems that Kelly has safely given birth. I learned this through a distant relative who managed to bypass my block and sent me a direct message on social media. The message included a photo of the newborn baby, along with the unnamed comment. Kelly seems to be struggling alone. Why not send her a congratulatory gift? I read the message and deleted it without replying. From another relative, I heard that Kelly's life is not as sweet as I had imagined. Unsurprisingly, she cannot live in my house. Nor does she have the capability, or will to raise a child, and work at the same time. In the end, Kelly returned to her parents' home, and her elderly parents are taking care of their grandchild. It seems that her parents are physically and mentally exhausted from taking care of her baby day and night, and from Kelly's increasingly selfish demands. I also heard that the significant reduction in their retirement funds due to expenses for home renovations casts a dark shadow over their hearts. The role that they once tried to impose on me for free is now something they themselves are shouldering. This is truly the meaning of retribution. Recently, I received a letter from my father through a lawyer. It contained words of apology and a request. Could we possibly meet and talk just once more, however? From the tone of the letter, I felt it was more of a selfish echo of wanting help with their current predicament than any sense of regret. I did not reply to him. I clearly understood that unless they genuinely confront their mistake and learn to respect the lies of others, no healthy relationship could be built there. This is not a matter of whether to forgive them or not. It is a necessary choice to protect my own heart and life.